And it's all working. So when you are ready, Mr. Chairman, we are ready for you.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, it's 4 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the Isabella County Board of Commissioners work session electronic meeting, March 16th, 2021. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Lux, a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Harry Hutchinson, present, reporting from my home in Ottawa Township, Isabella County.
Commissioner Engler, Commissioner
Here, I'm participating from my home in Deerfield Township, Isabella County, Michigan.
Commissioner Jelzinski,
Present, participating from my home in Chippewa Township, Isabella County, Michigan.
Commissioner Hope,
Here, I'm attending remotely from my home in the city of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, Michigan.
Commissioner Marino,
Here, I'm attending electronically from my home in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Isabella County.
Commissioner Swaney,
Here, attending remotely from my home in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Isabella County.
and Commissioner Horton.
Oh, that was probably for me. It froze up. Here, attending from my office in Big Rapids, Michigan, Mecosta County.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next, the approval of the agenda. We have general public comments under presentations and special reports. We have 2 items, fiscal year 2020 comprehensive annual financial report and supplemental information and financial statements. And also we have the Administrator Controller's Office Financial Management Report. Under appointments to boards and commissions, we have 1 appointment for the Community Mental Health for Central Michigan Board for a 3-year term. Under committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Finance and Administration is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up, Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up is Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Human Resources and Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chair.
Under Intergovernmental Affairs, I see none. Commissioner Vice Chairman Hope, do we have anything for that?
Not today, Mr. Chair.
All right, under Administrative Controller, we have nothing missed. Under unfinished business, nothing. Under new business, we have to consider one item with 5 things under it. Consider approving the following Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan Spring 2020 semi-annual 2% requests. Then after that, we have general public comments, announcements, and the adjournment. Can I get a motion and support for the approval of the agenda?
So moved, Marino.
Support Jelzinski.
We have a motion support for the approval of the agenda. Any further comment? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? We have an agenda. Next up, general public comments. Nicole, do we have anybody out there for general public comments?
At this time, Chairman, we have 1 unknown caller that has called into the Zoom meeting. We do have 22 participants. Just 1 unknown caller. So this is the time that they would raise their hand if they wish to speak. I do not see their hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll wait about a few more seconds and then we'll close that part.
So if you're
Okay,
on
we will
the
close
phone-
it.
I was
Go
just gonna let them know to press *9 on their keypad if they want to raise their hand.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a little hard functionality when you're on a phone, but I still don't see their hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we will close the general public comment section, move on to presentations and special reports. First up, fiscal year 2020 comprehensive annual financial report and the supplemental information of financial statements. Margaret, do you want to take that one or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to introduce Doug Dieter, CPA, who is principal with Raymond, who is the firm that has completed our audit. So with that, let's turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Good afternoon.
Interesting times we live in these days and how things have had to change due to all of this. So, I put together just a overview of the financial statement audit and the single audit that we performed for you during the year. I assume you all have the actual audit report documents that you can refer to if you'd like. On each slide, I put together the page number at the top that refers to the actual audit report. So if you want to find out where more detail the information is that I'm referring to, there is a page number to the actual audit report for you to look up more details. If there's any questions as I go throughout, I'm happy to address them at any point. Or if you want to look at more specific information in the audit report, I'm happy to do that as well. So I'm just going to start off just real quick, just to give you a quick overview of what an audit is, the different responsibilities of each party, and kind of walk through the audit process. So the first slide here looks at the county's management responsibilities. So management is responsible for the audited financial statements and their presentation in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Now, as an audit firm, we do provide assistance to the county and to the management, and we help them prepare these financial statements, but it is up to it's their responsibility to review, approve, and that type of thing. So that's the first one. The second one is, again, it's the county's management's responsibility to design, implement, and maintain internal control around the financial statement presentations and to ensure that they're free from material misstatement or they're due to fraud or error. And then the third one is just make all financial records and any information that we request from an audit perspective available to us and to ensure that information is reliable and properly recorded. The other side of that is us, as the independent auditor, Raymond. We have some responsibilities as well. Our responsibility is to take those financial statements that I mentioned on the previous slide and issue an opinion, or from a governmental perspective, multiple opinions, because there's different opinion units, different sections that we give opinions on. Our opinion is whether the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. We planned and performed our audit to obtain reasonable assurance rather than absolute. So it's not feasible for an audit firm to audit each transaction that goes through the entity throughout the year. So we do make samples or select samples. We test certain transactions, certain balances. We perform a risk assessment to identify the risk areas and that type of thing. So we don't perform an audit of 100% of the transactions. Therefore, our responsibility is to issue an opinion as to the reasonableness of the financial information. Then the last item, which is part of what we're going to do here today, is to communicate the significant matters we found throughout the audit process to you as the board. So the opinion that I did mention, we did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. And what that means is they're fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. An unmodified opinion is the same opinion you've received over the last many years. It is a clean opinion, means everything is good and the report is accurate. I just wanted to note that there were 3 component units of the county that Raymond does not audit: the Road Commission, the Transportation Commission, and the Medical Care Facility. Those are audited by other auditors. We take the other auditors' reports and incorporate them into the county's full report that you received. But we don't perform any procedures on those entities. It's basically, we rely on the other auditors to provide their report and to perform the audit of that component. We'll start looking at the general fund. This is the main operating fund of the county, as you know. The balance sheet presents all the assets and liabilities with the difference, or what's left over is the fund balance or the equity or what's left and available to the county going forward. The first section of the assets you can see is 11,600,000 approximately, and most of that is in cash and investments as well as receivables. Liabilities of about 1.8 million. You have your normal trade accounts payable. So these are invoices for services or product that were received prior to year end, and the invoice was paid subsequent to year end. Accrued payroll, similar type of thing, where that is the payroll earned by your employees throughout or at the end of September and paid out in October. There's some deferred inflows of resources of 761,000. This has to do with a portion of the receivables that aren't collected soon enough after year end in order to be considered revenue. So these will go into revenue in the next fiscal year. And then the difference between those three categories is what's called fund balance. As you know, that's broken down into three different categories. You have non-spendable of 249,000, which that has to do, if you look at the last two items in the asset section, it's those two items, the advanced component unit and then the other assets. That just means those are set aside because they're not available to use. And the other assets are like prepaids and that type of thing. Their money's already gone out the door. So they're not available for future spending at this point. The assigned of 3,095,000. This is the county has decided that they're going to use some funds going forward for certain purposes. This is one of the lower levels of segregated fund balances, where the county can change their mind tomorrow and change the purpose of these set-asides at this point. But as of September 30th, there was a 3.1 million in assigned items. And then what's left over after that is what's called unassigned of the 5,635,000. And that is available going forward on an ongoing basis for operations of the county. So we'll look at how that fund balance changed throughout the year. And one component of that is the general fund. This is shows the revenues budget to actual. The graph there, as you can see, the largest portion of your revenues in the general fund are taxes, property taxes of 12.7 million, followed by intergovernmental revenue of 4.2, which is your state and federal revenue. Couple things to note on here. If you were to compare last year to this year, some differences in your revenue sources. Your property taxes are up about $900,000, about a 7.5% increase. And then your intergovernmental revenue, the county received about 1.2 million in some CARES Act funding, so COVID relief funding, that I'll talk about a little bit later in detail. And that was offset by a decrease of about 300,000 in state shared revenue. So what had happened is the state was running short on money just as every other entity was. And so they created a grant through the CARES program, CARES Act, that essentially replaced 1 month of state revenue sharing. And it actually ended up being more than the county would have received in that 1 month. So your state revenue went down some, but your federal revenue went up more to offset. If we look at budget to actual, I think the taxes and intergovernmental, both exceeded your estimated final budget. I think both of that has to do with the CARES Act funding as well as the additional property taxes that were received. You can see the charges for services are down almost $500,000 from what you estimated through your final budget. And that had to do with a lot of things being closed down, especially the courts throughout the year due to the pandemic. So, next slide is the expenditures for the general fund budget to actual, broken down by the different functions. And as you can see, as you would expect, the public safety is the largest category in the general fund of 6.8 million. So that's your sheriff's department, corrections, jail, that type of thing. Followed by the general government at 5.9 and the judicial program of 5.3 million. You can see all the programs or all the functions were below budget from what was expected. So it's a positive variance. You didn't spend as much as you're expecting, but a lot of that had to do with things being closed down throughout the year, departments, buildings being closed, activities postponed, that type of thing. Nothing of significance one way or the other, just a lot of little things where you see the budget to actual variances there. There was one difference in the general government category. If you were to compare it to last year, there was about $900,000 in some preliminary costs for the jail that are included in the actual amount for 2020 for the new jail project that the county is working on. So we look at the total revenues and transfers in, subtract the total expenditures and transfers out, you get your net change in fund balance for the year. As you can see there, the final budget, the board expected the general fund balance to decrease $1,350,000 due to the items I noted in the revenue expense slides previously. The general fund actual reduction in fund balance is only just over $11,000. So a positive variance there of $1,339,000. One item to look at to give you an idea of how the county is doing is to take a look at the fund balance as a percent of 1 year's expenditures. I have two different ratios at the bottom of this slide. One is the total fund balance, which is approximately 42%. The next line is just the unassigned portion. So if you remember on the previous slide, we talked about the non-spendable and the assigned. That backed those two components out of the total fund balance. And your unassigned fund balance to 1 year's expenditure is about 26%. Just to give a little historical trend information, here's some 5 years of what the general fund balance, this is total fund balance, of what that looked like over the previous 5 years. As you can see there, from 19 to 20, you had a very, very small reduction in fund balance. The next item I wanted to touch on is the MERS Defined Benefit Pension Plan. This information gives you 6 years of trend information. Each year, MERS hires an actuary to calculate the total pension liability for each participant in the MERS plan. So the actuary takes all the assumptions that MERS establishes for each plan, and they do a calculation based on investment returns and participant data and that type of thing, and they calculate what your estimated total pension liability is there. And then that first line for 2020, you can see that's $51,365,000. Plan net position, the next column of $36,640,000. These are the investments that are held by MERS due to the contributions from the county that are set aside and invested by MERS to pay for the pension contribution, or pay for the pension benefits as the retirees claim them. So the difference between the total pension liability and the plan net position is what's called the net pension liability, which is at the end of September 30, 2020 is $14,724,000. So the plan is about just over 71% funded. The state is requiring these plans to be over 60%, so you're well above that threshold. A couple things to look at when you look at these numbers. Total pension liability, you can see there is a fairly large increase from 19 to 20, 2019, 2020. MERS reduced the expected future rate of return on the investments from 7.75% to 7.35%, so about a 0.4% decrease. And that is the significant increase in your total pension liability. So each time that MERS adjusts that expected future rate of return, that's going to increase your total pension liability. Similar thing happened between 2015 and 2016. You can see there's a large increase in your total pension liability as well. That's when MERS dropped their expected rate of return from 8% to 7.75%. The main swing in the plan net position, remember these are the investments that are held by MERS, invested by MERS. You can see from 18 to 19, you had a decrease of about $2 million in the plan net position. That was mainly due to investment losses. So MERS is measured at December 31st of each year. So if if you can remember that far back, your fiscal year 2019, the MERS would have been measured as of December 31st, 2018. That was a horrible time for the stock market. And there was a large decrease in that. Move forward 1 year to December 31st, 2019, and the stock market had recovered and significantly grown. And you can see where your planned net position went from 33.5 million to 36.6 million. And mainly that was the investment gain of about 4.5 million that played into that increase. So huge fluctuations based on what the stock market does at one point in time during that will impact your planned net position. So each year, the actuary also calculates what the actuarially determined contributions are for the county. You can see here is the 6-year trend again, compares the actuarially determined contribution to what the county actually contributed, which were the same each year. So 2020 was just over 1.5 million required and actual contributions for the year, which was just up slightly from 2019. So in addition to the financial statement audit, we did perform what's called a single audit. This looks at federal award compliance. So a little different than the financial statement audit. For this audit, we look at the federal grants and how the county spent the money, and we test to ensure that the county spent the money in compliance with the federal requirements within the grant agreement. So the county expended just over $2.2 million in federal awards this year, which is a significant increase over the prior year. I think the prior year was under $1 million, if I remember correctly. And the reason for that is the next bullet point, which was the major program that we audited for the single audit this year, which is the coronavirus relief funds of almost 1.3 million. This was made up of 3 different programs that were passed through from the state Department of Treasury. The Public Safety, Public Health Payroll Program. This reimbursed the county for some of the costs of their public safety and public health employees for March and April of 2020. Hazard Pay Program. This allowed the county to provide essentially a bonus or some additional compensation for the frontline workers. That was up to $1,000 per employee that met the requirements. And then the final one is a coronavirus relief local government grants. Remember earlier on a slide, I mentioned the replacement of the state revenue sharing. This coronavirus relief local government grants was the one program that replaced that 1 month of state shared revenue for that company. And that had a lot of different things that it could be spent on. I believe the county spent majority of it on some public safety and public health costs as well. We did issue an unmodified opinion on compliance related to federal programs, which again is another clean opinion on the compliance. Means that we did not come across any non-compliance issues for the programs that we audited. There was one change in accounting standard during the year, GASB 84, which had to do with what's called fiduciary activities. The county implemented this year. It eliminated a fund type, used to be called trust and agency funds. It created a new fund type called custodial funds, and really changed the focus of how to report the assets depending on who has control and custody of the assets. So you won't see a whole lot of change in the county's financial statement, other than some terminology changing. Throughout the audit process, we do offer suggestions for improvements, and if we did have any significant findings, those would be reported here as well. But all we have to report this year are some internal control recommendations. These are just some opportunities for strengthening the internal controls within the county. And if the internal controls are just like the checks and balances around the financial process. The first one is around bank accounts. The state of Michigan Treasury Department has required, the treasurer must maintain control over all bank accounts. Generally, this is, generally complied with by the treasurer being a signer on the accounts and that type of thing. The district court bank accounts, as we reported to you in the past, do not have the county treasurer as a signer on them. I know there's some discussions between the district court at the state level, who controls the district court at the state level, Department of Treasury, who put out these requirements. So it's just a suggestion that, we really suggest the county treasurer should have an understanding of all the bank accounts within the county. Credit card purchases, we did look at different departments that do allow employees to use credit cards. There are some departments that utilize a common credit card for multiple people. And what we did find at a couple of departments where there was not something similar to a sign-out sheet that could track who had the credit card at what point, who used it where, and that type of thing. So just a basic recommendation that each department that has a credit card that isn't issued to one individual person has some sort of a tracking mechanism to identify who had the card at what point in time. Just the checks and balances to know where it is and to make sure that the credit cards have appropriate controls around them. The next item around capital assets. So capital assets, there were two projects that began prior to September 30, 2020, which is the year we're reporting on. One was the 911 infrastructure improvements, as well as the jail program or the jail project. So these costs were captured, they were reported correctly within the general fund and the 911 fund. But there is a second component to that is anything that is considered a capital asset that meets the county's capitalization criteria, which is an asset that costs $5,000 and is going to last more than a year, gets capitalized at what's called the government-wide full accrual financial statements. So although these costs were reported, categorized, grouped, and reported correctly in the general fund and the 911 fund, they were left off the capital asset listing when we got to the government-wide presentation. So the necessary adjustments were recorded. So everything you see in the financial statements is appropriate in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And our recommendation here is just to have the county take a look at the checks and balances, the internal control processes and procedures around identifying the capital assets to ensure that all items that meet the capital asset criteria for the county get identified and included on the capital asset listing and reported correctly at the government-wide financial statements. The last item is there's several upcoming accounting pronouncements that will impact the county. One of the bigger ones, more important ones, I think, for the county at this point is GASB 87. It has to do with how leases will be reported from an external financial reporting process. And due to COVID-19, this has been postponed, the implementation of this out to your fiscal year 2022. And what this new standard does is it establishes a single model for reporting all leases. So currently there's two different models. One's an operating lease, one's a capital lease. They get reported differently under the current standards. This new standard will make all leases reported the same. And the intent there is just to make things a little more streamlined, consistent, and reported for around leases. So that is everything I had put together to go through with you today. If there's any specific questions or if you'd like to look at something specific, I'm happy to do that now.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Dieter? I see you're all muted on my side. I don't know who else is. If anybody has a question, raise your hand.
I have a question, and I don't know if this is for Mr. Dieter or whoever can answer it, I guess, but there's mention in a couple spots of community development block grants, and I guess I don't know much about those. I wonder who's utilizing those in the county. No.
Where specifically are you seeing that?
Oh, I couldn't say exactly where. I know it's on a couple of the couple of the spreadsheets throughout the report, there was a column for community development block grants.
So Mr. Commissioner, perhaps I can answer that. Mr. Chairman, perhaps I could answer that. Previously, Isabella County did receive some community development block grants. Currently, how that is happening through the federal and the state has adjusted some. I guess without knowing exactly what you're asking, I can't answer the question very well. Sorry, but I'm happy to look into it for you and get back to you.
Okay, that's fine. I guess I don't know enough to know what question to even ask right now, so that's fine.
I understand.
Well, I've been there looking at this stuff. Okay. Other commissioners, please raise your hand if I don't see you, because sometimes the screen goes a little slow. Just speak out. Commissioner, anybody else? All right, I don't see anybody raising their hands. I'd like to thank Mr. Dieter, the fine job again with Raymond Robinson, and yeah, thank you. Anybody think? So thank you very much. That'll move on to this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next up, the Administrator Controller's Office Financial Management Report. Margaret McAvoy and Stephen Karinovic.
Thank you, sir. I would like to start this evening with just a general announcement in that we have I'm very fortunate to have had an experience over my entire career at Isabella County to almost every winter semester have a wonderful, actually spring semester, a wonderful intern provided or offered from the Public Administration Department at Central Michigan University. And this year, I'm having the pleasure of working with Madeline Thomas, who is on the call. She's one of all those people somewhere on the call. Madeline is a junior at Central Michigan University in the honors program. She's majoring in political science and cultural and global studies. She has done an internship with Governor Peters in the past and also at the State House last year. And she wanted the opportunity to intern with somebody at a local governmental office level. And I was very fortunate to have her referred to me. So she is working with me and you will be hearing of her work down the road. We'll just leave it at that as a little tickler of something to look forward to. But Madeline has been doing a great job and we're very happy to have her. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity of knowing she's watching the meeting today so she can see what happens in county government from a Board of Commissioners viewpoint. So before I get into my report, I would like to start out by thanking the commissioners for an opportunity to provide some information to you on financial management policies and procedures in the Administrator Controller's Office. I want to start by thanking the extraordinary team of the Administrator Controller's Office and recognize Emma Nieport, Leanne Grinzinger, Melissa Franquist, Chris Whitmer, Nicole Frost, Jessica Jawazowitz, and Steve Karanovich, who really are a great team of people, a professional group of people, and folks who epitomize the public service view of looking at our jobs. I don't think anybody in county government can stay in county government very long and have much of a sense of satisfaction if they don't realize it's not a job, it's public service. And I think that that's important, and that's a crew that really does that. So I sent you a book, and I know that it was a big book, and I'm sure you all had a chance to read through it. So I'm not going to read through everything in it. We would be here till tomorrow, but I want to go through a few things and give you some highlights. So the first section of the notebook I sent you is financial management policies. And I'd like to just say that what you're seeing in this book today is primarily things that have happened during my tenure as the Administrator Controller. I don't want to take credit for anything that happened before I was here, and I can't, explain everything that may or may not have happened before I was here. But I want you to know that one of the things that, has been important to all of us, to the commissioners, and certainly to me as the Administrator Controller, is to make sure that we have good financial policies. So I'm not going to bother to read through these, but I want to draw your attention to the travel policy, which we adopted in December 18th. So that we are looking that we are all on the same page. These policies that you approved do apply generally in the first, under the first purpose. It talks about it applies and to be utilized by department heads, employees, and elected officials. So this is the policy that we refer to. You will note that I'm sure you read through the policy that specifically out-of-state travel is not something that is authorized by anyone except the Board of Commissioners. We do recommend that for in-state travel, conferences, training, those sorts of things, we do recommend as much as possible, and department heads and elected officials have done a great job at this, of projecting into their budget requests what they think they're going to need in travel. Of course, it's not carved in cement, but I wanted you to have the opportunity to see that. So you can, again, we have a lot on the agenda today, so I don't intend to read through these. I would suggest that as we're going through this, if somebody has a question, stop me or get with me after the meeting and we can go into it in depth. I'm going to move on to the remote access policy and say what a tip of the hat to the Board of Commissioners for approving this in 2019. I can't tell you how many of my colleagues across the state during COVID sent out requests that says, does anybody have a remote access policy or a remote work from home policy? So we were lucky to have that. I do want you to know that there is a slight difference between remote work from home and remote access. So when we talk about remote access, those are folks who have been approved to remotely access software programs through our programs. So either they can remotely access BSNA, they can remotely access what they need to at the sheriff's office, at the treasurer's office, other places. If you remember in 2019, those of you who were here, we started the remote access policy with one person. As of yesterday, we have 54 users who have access remotely. And I will say that, like anything else that happens in the information technology world, that whenever you do something out of whatever the nice, safe box is, right? We all get nervous and want to make sure we have great security, and we do. I want to tip my hat to the IT department, which really, please remember, is only 2 people, Michelle Doherty Ray, because Michelle is a newlywed, so you have to get used to her new name, Michelle Ray and Chris Vasquez, who have made this work for all of us, that it's made it's worked for. The remote work policy has worked very well for us. It's worked very well for us through the pandemic. It's going to continue to work for us. All of you read the same newspapers I read, I'm sure you hear the same things that I hear. The workplace has changed and will remain changed to some extent long after COVID is over. This is one of those pivotal moments in our world that things are going to change forever after this. So I'm really thankful to the Board of Commissioners that you seriously considered these remote access and work from home policies before the critical situation we are in. And it's worked very well for us. So I want you to know that that's working well. And I can tell you, it's pretty obvious to see the type of work that's still getting completed. And I will only use my office as an example. Payroll is always made, accounts payable is always made, Board of Commissioners packets always go out, right? We're in all of our meetings, we're doing all of our work, whether people are working remotely or on scene. I just want to thank all of the county department heads, elected officials, and the courts who have also been great to work with through all of this. It's been a stressful year for everybody, and I want to tip my hat to all of our partners. The fund balance classification policy, you can read that. That was approved in December of 2019. When we get talking about where we want to commit some of our revenues to pay for, utilize in payments for our project moving forward with the Sheriff's Office Correctional Facility, we'll be talking under this definitions of which one of these levels we want to utilize and what's in the best interest of the county moving forward. I've done some discussion with that with Steve Krajnovich at this point. He and I will be making a recommendation to the board, perhaps even as early as the next meeting, of which of that level we should do to make sure that those funds are being quote unquote set aside and are going to be utilized for the purposes the Board of Commissioners has. The credit card management policy, you're going to note that today on your agenda you have an update of that policy. Mr. Dieter was exactly correct. We do have some departments that we have individual persons who have a credit card assigned to them. The numbers are different. There Isabella County cards, It's made out to that individual. They're responsible for the security of those. But we do have a couple departments that have general use credit cards. And although we had 2 of those in the administrator's offices that people would check out, for example, if they were going to Lansing to a training session for a couple days or whatever. And we had a sign in and sign out sheet. And my staff was, I'm telling you, on it to make sure that that was done and corrected and that those cards were secure all the time. Now in the new credit card policy that you're going to be hopefully approving later in the agenda, that same sign in, sign out log is what's going to now be required of any of the other departments who have general purpose credit cards. It's worked well for us for all these years. And we think it'll work well across the system. We don't want everybody coming up with their own procedure and their own form. That would be difficult for everybody to manage, control, and difficult for the auditors to audit next year. So that's going to be happening. That's on your agenda today. We appreciated that input and suggestion from Doug and his team. So that's where we are with that policy. Capital asset management policy that updated and adopted, adopted in December of 2019. Back to the management discussion that Doug had about the capital asset management of what we have spent so far on the jail project. I'll be honest with you, back to what he said, it was all reported correctly. It was all it was all accounted for correctly. A different interpretation of putting that on the capital asset list. We have currently done that, and that issue or that suggestion has already been dealt with for us. So we're happy to have that pointed out. We had the discussion and we concurred with Doug's in his team's recommendation. So we have done that. Procurement policy. This is a big policy for us. Obviously, when you have a size, oh, my internet says that I have my little connection is unstable. Can you hear me still and see me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Hear you well.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Chairman. You're not seeing us, are you?
I can see, yeah.
Okay.
Sorta, yeah.
Sort of. So our procurement policy, we adopted this policy in 2018. Part of adopting this policy in 2018 was to, again, have a coordinated way we were doing this. We're not to the size of needing to have a purchasing department, but we are to the size to have our procurement policies consistent across the board. And again, tip of the hat and thanks to elected officials, department heads, and employees, because folks have embraced it and followed it, and we appreciate it. At the same time, we were doing that policy and looking through what we needed to do and how we needed to do it to make sure that we were being consistent and fiscally responsible and that the policy was going to apply to everyone. We developed behind that policy is the draft for you of a request for proposals. So if we are doing a request for bids, quotes, or proposals, we use primarily the same format. And this format can be changed, updated for what it needs to be. So if we're going to do a proposal for a study of some kind, as an example, as we did for the classification compensation study or the facility studies or other things, you have on your agenda today for the cost allocation plan. So those types of things, we use the same format. We update the specificities, we update the dates, we update what we're going for, but we use the same type of format so that there is consistency, so that when we have trained department heads and elected officials with employees on this process, everybody's comfortable with it now. It was a transition, but again, everybody cooperated, everybody followed it, and it's turned out really well for us. One thing I want to talk to you about is that one of the things that we worked on when we did that was to make sure that we were going to be getting the best prices we could possibly get. And to do that, we joined 2 things. We joined MyDeal, which is the state level purchasing program where the state goes out and gets back bids and quotes on certain things like screwdrivers, tires for tractors, all sorts of things. Anything pretty much that you could think of, they have got bids for. They have such purchasing power that they can get really good prices on things. So we joined MyDeal. We don't have to pay anything for it. It's a state-sponsored activity. We can go in there and look at costs for things. Our policies that we just kind of flipped through real quick there, they very clearly state that if we are utilizing MyDeal, then we don't need to go out for other bids, quotes, or proposals because of the purchasing power of the state. They have already gotten a fabulous deal on those items. In addition to that, we joined the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network, which is 2 pieces of paper just before tab, I guess just a couple of pages before the end of tab 1, just before tab 2. So to look at that, I want you to know that this is a listing service, for lack of a better term. So when we release bids, quotes, or proposals, so we're releasing a request for proposal, bid, or quotes. You know, we release those in 2 places. One is our website and the other one is on Mitten. People who go on Mitten to look to see if there are any bids, quotes, or proposals they want to respond to are not required to pay a fee. They're not required to pay a membership fee to Mitten unless they want to be notified of certain areas that those types of bids are getting listed on Mitten. So for example, if a car dealership wants to be notified electronically every time any organization goes into a bid process to buy a new police cruiser, they can choose to do that and they pay a fee for that. But other car dealerships go, I'm not going to pay the fee. I can just check it out every other day and see who's on it. And so nobody's required to pay a fee. We don't have to pay a fee to use it. Somebody else doesn't have to pay a fee to look at it. If they want notifications through Mitten, they need to pay that fee. We have really benefited from this broad stroke on where our bids, quotes, and requests for proposals go. It's good for us. And it also eliminates anybody ever saying, well, I didn't see it. You know, it's there, it's on our website, it's listed on Mitten. We talk about that all the time so people know to look there. And I just think it's a really good thing for us to have done. So kudos to the Board of Commissioners for doing that. The next page that you're looking at is a spreadsheet, and that is in just, I think, I think it's the second page in from tab 2. That's a spreadsheet to looking at our grant awards. These grant awards financially are managed primarily through the Administrator Controller's Office. So it's not that the Administrator Controller's Office is providing services to indigent defendants at our Public Defender's Office. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. We are not doing that. That's what the Public Defender's Office does. But as far as managing the contracts, doing the financial reporting, making sure that what we're reporting is a allowable cost, making sure that it's going to be acceptable, having all the documentation, getting all that in, that's done at the Administrator Controller's Office. So I thought you might be interested in seeing a list of what those grants are. Now, the first one here, the first one listed here is the Adult Drug Court. Let's be sure that we understand that most of the grants through the trial court are managed through the trial court accountant, which are on the second sheet here. But we do have to do some of the reporting for the Adult Drug Court. It's just the way that one is. But when you look at this other listing of grants, you can see that there are a great number of grants. I believe it's 55 that are reported financially somewhere, somehow through the Administrator Controller's Office. And so I just wanted you to see that so that you can understand, you know, all of the, for example, all the Commission on Aging grants, all of the emergency management grants, the parks grants, the material recovery facility grants, all of those grants sooner or later walk through the Administrator Controller's Office. And so we're making sure that those monies are spent correctly and that they are allowable, allocable, reasonable, and necessary. And those are 4 words that I learned in my 20s when I was thrust into a position to be in charge of a federal job training program with $3 million and about 30 employees. And I learned those 4 words really quickly because we are spending taxpayers' money at a huge level, certainly in the county. But once you start getting grants, people sometimes have an interesting thought about the accountability for those funds. Grant funds are as important to account as any other source of funds. Those expenditures have to be allowable according to the contract of that particular grant. They have to be allocable, which means you can determine, are they being allocated to admin? Are they being allocated to training? Are they being allocated to equipment? They have to be reasonable, which means would a reasonable person, if you ask them that question, if that was a reasonable expenditure, would a reasonable person go, sure, that makes sense? Or would a reasonable person go, no way, I would not want to pay for that. So allowable, allocable, reasonable, and necessary. Those are the 4 keywords. So I wanted you to see that so you could see what's happening. And then if we move from that tab to tab 2, this is something that Doug already kind of touched on, so I won't go into great depth. But you can look at the MERS retirement expenses scenario, and you can see where we were in an upward trajectory from 2011 up till peaking at 2018, when the Board of Commissioners adopted scenario 1 to the defined benefit. And you can see that we have certainly leveled off for 2019, 20, and 21. That was a great decision by the Board of Commissioners. And the Board of Commissioners who were on the board at that time were deliberate in those thoughts. They had a great presentation. They considered it moving into the forward, and they made a good choice. I want you to have the chance of seeing that. If I'm going too fast, somebody stop me. Okay. The next sheet is the cost allocation application. We talk about cost allocation plans. We're bringing you a contract, continue the second year of a 3-year grant or a 3-year contract with the cost allocation plan. We're looking at the fact that starting a couple of years ago, we decided to look at our departments that were not general fund departments, but were receiving the services of general fund offices and departments, and start charging them the cost allocation indirect cost. And you can see that that has made a tremendous amount of difference. These costs have been supported time after time with the cost allocation plan that is done for us by an outside source. I think one of the true testaments to this was with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, when they did not want to approve indirect cost rates. And the county administrators and controllers bound together. And you have that pivotal moment during some time where you're thinking, I'm just not making any sense. And eventually I held up our cost allocation plan and I said, I'm from Isabella County, a small county in the middle of the mitten. This is our plan. It's this thick. It's a statistical analysis. This is where this figure came from. And a testament to other commission members, they had really no idea, no experience. And a judge in another county, when that subject finally got discussed, he turned to the group and he said, how can you argue with that? Obviously, this is a usual and customary thing that happens in county government. How can you argue with that? Well, they couldn't. And for us, it's made a tremendous difference. The next sheet talks about the MERS defined benefit, expense allocation, and the health insurance. Prior to 2019, we were paying the defined benefit. And now we have decided to allocate that back respectfully to all of the departments. And we're also doing that with the HRA costs for our health insurance, rather than having a pot of money here in the general fund that's paying all of it. That doesn't make any sense either. We want to be sure that we're allocating it back to the departments, and it's part of the budgeting process. And again, hats off to the department heads and elected officials. You can look at the next sheet just before tab 3, and that also talks about some fund transfers to the child care fund. I want to say that the child care fund, these monies are used to take care of kids through our trial court system. Whether they are children who have been abused or neglected, or they are children who are juvenile defenders, they need our care, they need our support. The state requires the funding for that through the child care fund. There are state monies that are utilized for this. County monies have to also be utilized for it. There have been times that it's been pretty well up and down, up and down, up and down. I want to say that we are doing so much better and being more steady in what's being used in the child care fund. But the appreciation for that and the attention for that really needs to go to Carrie Curtis as the court administrator. When she hired in as the court administrator, I said to her, Carrie, this is an issue. And also at the same time, the state had changed their software program for the accounting of the child care fund, and they were months and months and months behind. So between the Isabella and Clare County Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Director and Carrie Curtis from the trial court, they have done a great job. And you can see the financial benefit to us to the great job they have done in that. So I just want to give kudos where kudos deserve to go. Section 5, I'm not going to go through all this. We went through all this last year, but we do have a new commissioner, Commissioner Hutchinson, and I don't think that he would have any idea when we talk about the classification compensation study or how we chose how to implement it. So I included that in this document. I believe, Commissioner Swaney, you were here for all of this, I believe. Am I correct? Yes. But I wanted everybody to kind of see it again. So Commissioner Hutchinson, you read through this at your leisure, and when you want me to have it, give you the reader's condensed version, you call me and I will do that. This was a huge effort on behalf of the county. You know, we had a great study done. Then we had the study done for our feasibility, which is the next section here, as far as our facilities. So I wanted to include these both in this booklet. We killed a number of trees for this, but I wanted everybody to see it. So Commissioner Hutchinson, particularly for you, go through that. Go through about halfway through is where the feasibility study is for the Sheriff's Office, County Jail, the administration, and the trial court building. And I think that you will enjoy reading that, and you will have an understanding of what we always kind of knew our priority was the jail, but the study certainly cemented that, brought that home for the Board of Commissioners. So I think it's a nice idea for you to have that same level between those two huge projects over the last couple of years and into the next couple of years, the same foundation as everybody else. So if you go to tab number 4, you're going to talk about, we're going to talk about vehicle replacement and retention plans. So one thing that back before Sheriff Main started, I had spoken with the undersheriff about at the Sheriff's Department was we really need to be having some type of a rotation system for these vehicles, because we just we cannot have our law enforcement officials in vehicles flying down country roads who have 200,000 miles on them. It's not safe. It's not a good risk management. It's not safe for our employees. It's not safe for the public. So we talked about vehicle rotation, and the undersheriff at the time, John Tellis, did some research and some studies and read some other studies. And the typical rotation for law enforcement vehicles was between 75,000 and 100,000 miles. So we started that rotation. Sheriff Main has maintained that rotation with the undersheriff Tom Burns working on that. They do try to start looking at rotating their vehicles at 75 miles, somewhere between 75 and 100 is kind of the sweet zone. So that is what the Sheriff's Office has continued to do. I just wanted you to know that inspections departments vehicles, parks and recreation vehicles, and other general use vehicles that we have in the, we're looking at about 85,000 miles. That's really for trade-in value. So if we drive them for 85,000 miles, we maintain them well. That's a good point for us to trade those in. So that's what we're looking to as good financial management with our vehicles. The next sheet here is a little information for you in that we are now selling our vehicles through an online auction. And the Sheriff's Office brought this to me a couple years ago, maybe, and kind of talked about maybe we should move to this. Okay, well, I suppose we probably could. And we talked about it. And the sheriff and I had a great discussion, and he was going to have the undersheriff manage it. And I'm like, hey, would the undersheriff manage selling some other vehicles for us? Well, yeah, they would. So this has turned out really well for us. You know, we haven't got to drive vehicles someplace else. We haven't got to stand outside and have somebody come look at them or whatever. It's all online. It's an auction. It's worked out very well for us. So this list will give you a listing of the vehicles that we have sold. You'll see that a lot of them are police law enforcement vehicles, but the undersheriff has also sold a couple trucks for us. He has sold a couple of, a truck from the Parks and Rec Department, a couple of very old animal control trucks, a private passenger truck, car that had been parked in the trial court parking lot for a long time. I think it was an old, way old, original police vehicle. So we're trying again to, we don't need to have these inventories. What's the purpose of it? If we can get a fair market value, let's sell them. So the under sheriff is doing that for us. He has done a great job. You can look at the next couple sheets and see what the listing looks like online. And in case you didn't know, there is a market for used police vehicles. There are people who like to buy them. So it's good that we can sell them this way. And Under Sheriff Burns is doing a great job for us. Behind tab number 5, we're just talking about the annual process and the budget process. Again, I won't read this all to you. I will tell you that it is very interactive and it is transparent. I generally do, I did not do it last year, other staff did it for me, but we generally do facilitate a meeting with the department heads and elected officials early into the budget process to give them their packets and to go through, here's the budget calendar, the capital expense form, here's the personnel action, all of these forms. We generally have a big meeting. Of course, we couldn't do that last spring in COVID. We did it electronically. I do have a personal meeting with all of the department heads and the elected officials to go through their budget in detail, listen to what their needs are, listen to what their concerns are, listen to what their priorities are. It helps me and my team to have those opportunities. And I think it's very good relationship wise to sit down and have those discussions with each elected official and department head. They know their office and operation and departments better than anybody else. So we want their expertise. Eventually then I do bring some drafts to the finance committee. We are doing 3 of those during the process, and we've been doing that for 2 years now, to provide some transparency in the process and also to get the input and suggestions of the finance committee. Then, you know, after that, after the first time of that, often we'll meet again with department heads or elected officials if they wish to schedule a second meeting, or if there's something further that I need more information on, or if I want to sit down and say to them, hey, I understand that you really want these 5 things, but I'm not sure we can afford them. Do you want to prioritize those and get back with me? So again, a great relationship. And eventually I give a full presentation to the Board of Commissioners detailing each fund. And then the Board of Commissioners hopefully formally passes and adopts the budget. You're required to adopt a balanced budget by September 30th because our fiscal year starts October 1st. So the next sheet has to do with fund balance. Our auditor had something in his presentation about fund balance. I wanted to talk a little bit and just show you this. We don't need to go into the deep dive, but I want you to see the difference between what was budgeted in budgets to be used in fund balance compared to what was actually used. So I'll just pick one of these. We'll pick, we'll just go to the top. So in 2016, the budget was to use $817,963 of fund balance. We actually used $340,000. In 2017, it was to do 2 million. We actually did 1.1. In 2018, it was to use 1.9 million. We actually used 900,000. In 19, we were budgeted to use $629,816. We didn't use any. And we, when I say we, I mean we as the county, we actually added to fund balance at a rate of $287,350. And in 2020, we were budgeted to use $1,350,000 of fund balance, and we used $11,022. Now, undoubtedly, that big swing is probably because of COVID, and we wouldn't deny that, but it's still a good outcome. Whatever caused it, it's still a good outcome. The next set of documents after that, you have seen this. These are the quarterly reports. If you look at your budget formats, you'll see that the format is the same. So your budget format and the budget book that you get as we're going through the budget process, then the quarterly reports follow the same format for consistency. After that, there's some financial management software. I want to talk about this because those of you who were here prior to 2017, and many of the commissioners on this call today at this meeting were here prior to 2017. The financial management program we had was called ACS. There was one vendor in the state of Michigan still on ACS. That was us. Nobody, yeah, Commissioner Horton was right. Nobody else was on it anymore. It was basically a DOS program made to look like a Windows program, but it was not. And, you know, I knew when I got here in 2013, we wanted to move on, but you can't go into that large of a financial commitment your first few days. You've got to take it steady. You've got to do your research. You've got to get other people on board. So the Board of Commissioners did vote to transition to BS&A, which is utilized by many, many municipalities across Michigan. And quite frankly, they've kind of gone national. It's very user-friendly. It's very adaptable. It has very customized reporting. Prior to the transition, we were paying an annual fee to ACS for annual support of $115,444. And the support we had was minimal at best. Minimal. We currently pay and have since we transitioned support fees of $10,700 a year to BS&A, and it's unlimited. So yes, we paid over $300,000. I think it was $360,000 in 2017 to transition. It's paid for itself already, just in the savings on those fees. So I don't think that there'd be a person either on this call who works with any of this or anywhere in our operation who would go, oh gosh, if we could just have ACS back. I don't think anybody would say that. So it's been great. Let's flip the page and talk about accounts payable. And I know my time is getting thin here because we want to make sure that we get to Steve. So I'm gonna quit soon here in just a minute. I want you to see the accounts payable process because you approve the checks. I want you to know what goes in behind that. There is a multi-layered system before these checks are cut. And I wanted you to have the chance to see it. I'm sure you've all read this. So I'm not going to go into all the deep dive with you again. But trust me, there are about 4 different sets of eyes on this stuff long before it ever gets to the point of a check being cut. Then those checks are taken to the clerk in the treasurer's office who signs them. So there are a number of levels of checks and balances. And I think that we do a great job with that. I do want you to see down here on the bottom here of the number of checks that are cut. So in 2016, we had a high of the last couple of years of 11,000 checks. In 2020, we had 8,000 checks. But please remember, the number of checks cut does not equal the number of invoices processed. We might cut 1 check to Home Depot, but that might be for 30 different invoices from 10 different departments. So I don't want you to misunderstand. The number of checks cut does not mean everything that's processed. It is a yeoman effort on behalf of the department employees who enter, the department heads, elected officials who approve, my office who manages it, reads them again, goes through them again. Leanne, who does the actual, she checks everything. I'm going to tell you, do not lose a receipt. That woman will find you wherever you are. She will make sure you have that receipt. If you don't have it, she'll have you get another one and bring it back in. She is very good at that. Department heads are very good at that. You know, once Leanne does her part of accounts payable, then at least one other person in my office again looks at it, whether it's one of the staff accountants, which it usually is, or Nicole if they're not available. This is after the department heads and elected officials and their designees have already approved them. So it's a multi-layered thing. I feel it works very well. But I want you to know the level of accountability there is. Next, you're going to see behind tab 6, and this is just for your information. This is an ongoing working budget put together for our Sheriff's Office Corrections Facility project. The latest of this is February 2nd. I just wanted you to see that. There is a synopsis on the first page, but I thought you would like to see the level of it and have an opportunity to look at that at your own leisure. It gets updated, you know, every couple months. Things change, things shift. We're looking at other things. But I wanted you to see that and see the in-depth of accountability there. With that, I'm going to ask Steve to go through these spreadsheets he has. Many of you have seen these before, and Steve, again, most of the commissioners have seen these. If you want to get a quick overview, and then Commissioner Hutchinson can, contact us afterwards to ask more questions. We want to leave plenty of time for Steve to go through his items in tab 7. So Steve Kranovich.
Great, thank you, Margaret. Make sure everybody can hear me. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Well, I've got what, 2 hours? Is that right? Is that what I've?
Oh, yeah. Take 2 hours, Steve. Yeah.
No, okay. No, so hopefully, like you said, everything should be in your booklet or your pack there that you have. But I know that's been kind of the theme of the last few meetings as we've discussed, working forward to this jail project and everything on the cost and the affordability of the project and so this project, this forecasting project was a great exercise, to go through. But remember, that's what it is. It's simply a forecast, based on historical data, and then we've utilized that and projected that out. Margaret, did you?
Excuse me, Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sorry. I moved you ahead of tab. I wanted you to talk real quick about the spreadsheet at the end of tab 6, first, before you move into the trends and forecasts, to look at the jail funding.
Okay, sorry, I jumped.
I'm sorry, no, I misspoke.
So
me.
I will just briefly, I will share this, and this you all have seen before, and so this spreadsheet, basically what we did back in the fall, I believe it was, projected out the wind turbine revenues, and then the corresponding, what I would call the big three, the big three costs related to the jail and sheriff's office debt, and the estimated MERS payments, and then also the wind turbine dollars coming in to make the, like I said, to make those payments, make the debt, and then the MERS payments going forward. So I won't go through this because we've looked at this before, but but the concept that we had here on this was, the utilization of those dollars, and Margaret mentioned a little bit about it, and I know we've talked about it before, is the key to commit those dollars that don't get utilized until we have a need for them to make the debt payments and to continue to make the MERS payments and so forth. So this spreadsheet, we utilize this as we get into the forecast that we'll talk about in a minute, but we use some of this data to kind of sync up with the forecast. So we had comparable information on both of them and utilized them. This one, as like I said, it has quite a few assumptions here noted at the bottom, and the trending of the turbine revenue there on line 5 from the initial implementation of the project to 2022, the expected full implementation, and then that depreciated value of that project, peaking in 2022. And then as it, tails out, out here into to a cap out on 2031. So over a 10-year period, that it caps. And then also projecting out the jail debt over a 40-year period, the amortization schedules, coming from the municipal advisors, and then also projecting out the MERS payments. And as Margaret mentioned, set by, the commissioners, how those were going to be phased in based on your election of I think it was criteria, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 or whatever that criteria was that was selected for that. So so that, that spreadsheet, again, I won't go through that anymore. That was, because we did go through that in depth back in the fall, but it does project, a substantial length of time out there, way out to, 2061, over that 40-year life of the jail debt. You know, and obviously a fantastic project and a project that will be, you know, great for the community, great for the, you know, for the county moving forward, and then kind of the means of paying for that, as you can look at that. That was really all I would go. I guess I wanted to go over on that, since, you know, I know we've got some other stuff to go over and you've got a long agenda. I don't know if there's any specific questions or anything else that wanted to be, you know, rediscussed, I guess, related to that spreadsheet.
Steve, real quick, I'll just say mine to the end. I did, in previous discussions too, we talked about under our policy as a board, fund balance classification policy. I don't know if it's a topic for tonight, but I do think we need to look at that, especially under how we're going to define what type of funds this is going to be. My first thought and only my first glance and committed glance has been to have it as a committed fund. And I know that's going to take board action. So I don't think we should need to talk about it tonight, but I've been saying that all along, because and again, it's only boards can change, policies can change, but we have a policy set up. So I think that down the road, I think finance and administration and all along with this board is going to have to make a decision if that's the route we're going to choose to fund the project, which I believe it will probably be, is to make that a committed fund probably.
Agreed. Yes.
We'll be
No,
bringing
I would.
bringing that recommendation to the board. Absolutely. Steve and I will be bringing that recommendation to the board. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And that's,
right.
yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think that as Mr. Dieter mentioned, you know, I mean, those levels of constraints of the fund balance, and Margaret mentioned also, you know, that committed, you know, is commitment by this particular board. I mean, there's a potential of changing of that commitment, of uncommitting it and doing something, you know, but you know, the intentions, like you said, of this board chairman would be, you know, if that's what the board decides to do, you know, then yes, I think commitment is the right thing. I'll stop sharing that and go back to you, Margaret.
No, I'm gonna turn you right over to tab 7, Steve.
Okay. All right. Good.
That's the show.
Okay. Okay. So here is the forecast, and this information is multiple tabs within your spreadsheets, and I'm trying to locate this so I can share that with you. And no matter how many times you work in, you know, how many times you share your screen and do all those things. I know this isn't the right spreadsheet. I'm going to have to unshare that, but you think you have this process down, and it never seems to work the same way twice. So here we go. Okay. So we'll start here, but so as I started to say before, I mean, this was a great exercise to go through, you know, but remember, this is simply a forecast, you know, based on historical data. We'll talk about, you know, that historical data that we based this forecast on 5 years worth of audited information, and then the 2021 budget. So really, the forecasting going forward is based on 5+1, you know, so 5 years of historical audited data, and then your 2021 budget that was put in place. And then we utilize that and some other thoughts of forecasting out the 3 years that you as commissioners wanted to, wanted to see. So I think it's important, you know, you have these pages in your binder. There are kind of 3 sections of that part. The first one is just a single, it should be just a single 8.5 by 11 page. That's the summary page. The revenue projection is a large fold out 11.5 or 11.5 by 17, I think. And then the expenditures is even more detailed. That's about a 5-page 11 by 17 spreadsheet. So might help if you snap those out of your binders and have those out. I mean, I'll put some up on the screen, but obviously you have those. they're huge, you know, and they're big, and they're it's somewhat cumbersome to show it on this small screen. But it might be helpful if you have those out in front of you. And but the one thing to keep in mind, we'll start with the summary page, but the one thing to keep in mind as you look at this, I put kind of a little disclaimer, so to speak, at the bottom of each page is just remember, it says, please remember that past performance may not be indicative of future results. So it's based on a lot of solid audited information. So the information that we use for audits, and they tie back to the audits over the last 5 years. And you can kind of see those checkpoints in there that I've assured that they tie back to the audit. So we have very good historical data that we're utilizing. And then, like I said, projecting that out but with anything like that and any kind of forecast like that, we don't know what the future will hold. I mean, as we've talked about this, we've had different conversations about, well, if you asked me a year ago, we might know what COVID is, we might know what that, but we never had any idea what was, what all was going to entail over the last year, what CARES funding was and what that was going to do. Nobody really knew any of that kind of stuff. So we have, we've done our best with the historical information that we have to forecast out. But there's no perfect crystal ball to be able to tell you what the future will hold for revenues and expenditures. Because obviously we know the only thing constant is change, if that makes sense, but it's kind of a moving target. But what I feel the beauty of this spreadsheet will be is we can modify that target as we move forward. And if we want to see different scenarios, we can make changes. And I'll show you kind of how that works as we do that. We've tried to project some of those already, so at least you can see kind of some of that happening in the static copy that you have there in front of you, the hard copy. But the key to this is that this is a very fluid document that can be modified to try different scenarios, as if we desire those changes. But I think the key is that, those kind of modifications, if we want to see those going forward, can funnel through, Margaret and then to me. This spreadsheet is not the easiest to work with, and I know some of the commissioners love spreadsheets more than others, but this is a very somewhat complex spreadsheet that is pulling from different files and different things and calculating these numbers, and one little change on one page can flow through and make multiple errors on other pages if we're not careful. So but that, like I said, that's a very fluid document. I think is important that we can utilize this going forward as that forecast. So let's start with the summary page of all the details, and this is kind of the top layer, trends and forecast for today, as of today. And I'll show you how we got to here, but just kind of starting here again, kind of like Margaret tried to talked about how we've tried to have a consistent format and a consistent presentation to the commissioners on things, whether it was the budget, whether it was the quarterly reports, and your audit report, all of those reports, and similar to this forecast, we tried to use similar headings, similar groupings, and that type of thing, so you have some familiarity with these titles of taxes and licenses and permits and intergovernmental and that type of thing for revenues. And then we boiled expenditures down into more of a categorical thing, categorical setting of salaries and benefits, as it says there, operations. We tried to really boil those up to high level rather than get into the weeds of those numbers here in the salary, or excuse me, on the summary. And then we've added a couple lines here, and again, I'll show you the details of this as we get into the back. But if you recall from that other spreadsheet that we looked at, and the scenario that you selected for MERS, that will increase over the next X number of years until it hits the cap of those payback amounts, and then it starts to decline. So what we did here is this added MERS payment is the difference between kind of the base level that we showed on that spreadsheet of, I think it was roughly 1.4 million. And then if you remember, it creeps up each year about 500,000. Well, this 350,000 is the general funds component of that increase. So that was a pretty significant number. And so we wanted to pull that out separately and show that to you, that we have taken that into consideration as we've done this forecast. And then also under transfers out and debt payments, this includes that debt payment that we'll get into, but that is included in there. If you remember that other spreadsheet that took out those debt payments for 40 years, this forecast takes that into consideration also. So at a high level, coming back to the forecast of, remember we used 5 years of audits plus 1 year of budget for the budget of 2021. So we use that to forecast 2022, 2023, and 2024. And so this is the summary of that, and as it shows here, roughly, 23,100,000 in revenues and about 23 million in expenditures. I mean, we're coming out basically at a break-even point on these 3 years based on the assumptions that we presented in the details, which we'll get to in a minute. Yes, Commissioner Jelzinski.
Can I infer that in the transfers in, we're basically looking at the indirect cost payment?
Yes, sir.
Other small commissary, but it doesn't include any capital or fund balance at this point.
That is correct. That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're correct. If there was and that's something I know that has historically happened with, like we were talking, Margaret was mentioning the sheriff's office with vehicle purchases, and then dollars come in from the commissary to offset some of that expenditure. That would be included in there. And like you said, Commissioner, the amounts transferred from the various different funds for the cost allocation. Correct.
Thank you.
So that's the summary, kind of a snapshot, just a very high level rolled up, and we'll get into the as we talk about it, as we were preparing this, we'll get into how the sausage is made, so to speak, and get into the details a little bit. So this is the revenues, and so the revenue spreadsheet, again, what it does is it does take, as you can see here, it does take 5 years worth of audited information. And again, that information ties directly back to the audits, and then it takes the 2021 budgeted information, includes all that information in here at that high level. And then it does some calculations that are detailed here that basically is taking a comparative analysis or calculating a percentage of change on an annual basis, going out for the 5 years worth of audit years there, and then the 5th year, the last audit compared to the current budget, and then averages those columns, and comes up with some average percentages here. So this is kind of the driver for the calculations in the forecast for 2022, 23, and 24. But what we also have built into the spreadsheet is the ability to override the percentages. What it would normally calculate on is it would normally calculate on the averages. But we know things like the revenue, or excuse me, like the property tax revenue. We know that, if you remember again from that other spreadsheet, in 2022, we're going to have the full benefit of the wind turbines being in place and taxed and so forth. So what we did was we looked at that and we estimated from 2021 to 2022, we overrode the percentage to 16% to give us roughly what we expect our forecasted revenue of about 15.8 million in property taxes will be. And we'll come back to that number in just a second, but just kind of finish going through the overall methodology of the forecast.
Steve,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Given that the new stimulus package has been passed and on MAC, we've been getting some information about that. $2 billion is coming to our state. It's going to go to cities, townships, and counties. So will these spreadsheets have input rate regions so we can, adjust all our actions given the amount of money we're getting in?
Great question, Commissioner. Yes, I mean, we can incorporate those. They're not in there now just because we didn't, I mean, that was yesterday or whatever it was, and we, we had to draw a line in the sand to say, okay, stop, we have to stop, at some point, but yes, we can encompass that kind of information in the spreadsheet if we know that we're going to, that the county is going to receive X and we're going to utilize X minus whatever might get distributed to the community. We're going to utilize, that amount for whatever it may be, as long as it's within the parameters of the dollars that they're, that they're allowing us to utilize. We can absolutely factor that into the spreadsheet and take that into account. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So basically what it does is, it drives that forecast for the 3 columns is driven off of either the average of how things have transpired over the last, 5 years plus 1, or if we override the percentages. And some of these, we obviously overrode property taxes because we knew that 2022 was going to be that first big influx, of the wind turbine dollars. And then we looking at some of these other revenues, we felt, like as a, for instance, charges for services had an average over the last 5 years of, of a negative number, or fines and forfeits and licenses and permits, all those revenues. Some of them had some spikes because of like wind turbine licenses that had to be done. Well, you had a big spike in 1 year and then a big drop the next year because you had a one-time, payment of a license or a permit or, something like that. So we looked at that and said, well, 2% seems pretty reasonable. I don't know if, I mean, if you look at a lot of these, if you kind of factor out some of the big spikes, as you can see here, I mean, you look at some of the years, this licenses and permits. I think this was when the wind turbine had their first license, or something, 186% increase. Well, wouldn't that be nice every year? But we know that's not possible, and so. And looking at some of those other, other categories, we looked at those and said, okay, well, let's kind of smooth that. I mean, it's kind of almost like, like the actuary does with their actuarial things. Let's smooth those things and then, so that's what we did for some of these other, we overrode some of those other percentages. But really, if you look at all of this, if you take out property taxes are roughly 70% of those revenues. Any 1 or 2 percentage points on those other, roughly 30% of the revenues isn't a huge impact to the, to the calculations. So, I mean, you can utilize kind of your judgment and increase or decrease those depending on, however they could potentially shake out. But we felt that average was pretty reasonable to go with 2%. And then, as you can see, those kind of trended. We put in a 0% increase from there. Just, again, very conservative. Tried to, if you see, this, I think it's a couple dollars different because there's some rounding that happens in the calculation. But, for instance, charges for services, $2,052,000, $2,052,000, so that kind of walked itself forward within a few dollars, and holding constant with that 2%. So that's what we did for the revenues, and to kind of touch on the property tax component of that, is, as we talked about, the 16%, and then And then we use 3%, but as you look at it, here, the average over the last 5 years plus one was about 3.76%. So I kind of did an analysis to say, because again, it's difficult because you've had these, again, peaks with the wind turbines. But looking at the 2022 fiscal year and using that 16%, if you factored out, that's about a $2.2 million increase in property tax revenue. Approximately 1.4 million of that is related to the wind turbines. And that's what we showed on that other spreadsheet. So, I mean, if you wanted to go back to that other spreadsheet, that was about 1.2 million of that was the wind turbines. So that left about 800,000 or roughly 5.8% other increases. And as you can, as you look at this, if you look back from 2020 to 2021, I mean, there was a 7%, almost a 7%, 6.75% increase. So using 5%, I felt was pretty modest and was also pretty reasonable to increase. And I've got a lot more things I could, tell you about kind of the justification for. I won't go into a lot more detail, but, looking at that, I did obviously that's your largest revenue. And so I did a pretty detailed analysis to say, I feel, comfortable. I mean, is it 100% accurate? Well, no, but is it as accurate as I feel it can be at, using 16% here and then 3% and 3%. I feel very comfortable with, with those calculations on what we will see on an annual basis of an increase. But then you'll also see a decrease from the depreciation amounts from the wind turbines. So kind of the net effect of that is that 3% that we go over. So that's the sausage of the revenues. And then if we go to the expenditures, which again is a very large spreadsheet of about 5 pages in your booklets. And again, same concept here. We used 5 years and 1 year. So 5 years of audit, 1 year of budget, and then we get out here to the, whoops, have that on the screen. We get out here to the 22, 23, and 24. A little bit more complex with this expenditures because there's a lot more detail here. How this spreadsheet works is the default are these percentages here at the top in the green, and hopefully, I mean, I tried to make it as big as I could, but keep the pages as small or limited as I could. I tried to put a key code on your very last page of these 5 pages, so you can see by the different colors where these numbers are coming from. So hopefully that makes sense. So here, these are kind of the default percentages that these 3 areas would go up: the salaries, the operations, and the capital outlay, or excuse me, the salaries, operations, and transfers out. But again, you have the ability here, we have the ability to override those percentages. So if you looked at, let's just pick Board of Commissioners since you folks are right at the top, and 161,000 was the 2021 budget. This 164,000 is a 2% increase. So that's kind of how that, I mean, but if you wanted to come to a particular area and say, well, goodness, we're going to give I know we wouldn't, but so I can use this just because I know it's not feasible, but we could give a 5% increase to the Board of Commissioners. We can plug in that percentage in here, and it will change the formulas and change the spreadsheet to encompass a other than default percentage if we wanted to increase. And I'll actually show you that we did do that because in the jail area, looking out in 2023 and 2024, with the expectation of the jail coming online, we know we're going to have some additional costs there. So I'll kind of show you that, but just the concept of how that's working is we have the ability to drive it off of the default, or we have the ability to, again, override it if we chose to, based on these yellow code or yellow boxes. But then also, like I said, we also added in the general funds component of the increase in MERS. So that's that 350,000. Again, that's kind of a peachy shaded color there. I know it might not be as easy to see on the screen, but that's kind of peachy added there for the added MERS costs. But then this spreadsheet also takes into consideration capital outlay. So in a blue shaded area, if we were to plug in capital outlay for certain areas, and we, again, similar to Commissioner Marino's comment on revenues, on the expenditure side, we did the best we could with gathering forecasted capital outlay items. We were able to gather information related to information technology. So Michelle was able to provide us, some pretty detailed information on forecasted capital outlay for IT. And then also we factored in some sheriff vehicle rotation into that, into the capital outlay area. And then will there be other capital outlay? Yes. Do we know exactly when and how much and so forth? That's not factored into this calculation. But, like I said, those numbers can be factored in as we project and make modifications, going forward. But with the best information that we had as of last week, that's the capital outlay information that's currently included. Also included is, and it's at the very bottom, so I'll show you that, but the sheriff and jail building, the debt payments, those are included in there also. So what I wanted to show you, so this, like I said, this goes through pretty detailed, goes through every department, as you can see there on the, on the left-hand side. For instance, I just happened to stop here at administration, and so administration is in here, and then it's being forecasted up. This happens to be computer equipment that Michelle provided us information on and so forth. So those are built into the calculation. There's an amount in here, I believe I put it in 2023 in the forecast for phone system. That was something that Michelle had provided information. I think the phone system is very old at the courthouse and at the court. And so that's encompassed in here. But what I wanted to show you was down here in the 351, which is corrections. So this is where we're, again, able to override some of this, the calculations. So, going forward, what it's doing, again, driven off of these numbers here at the top, but we know, we don't know when the jail will come online. I know there's some, thing, but, I just for, so you folks could see how this is working, we projected it to come online at some point in time in 2023. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but anyway, so just so you can see how this is working, is what we said was we've increased salaries by about 5% and then operations by 10%. Again, just as a example to see how the spreadsheet works, and then for 2024, again, we projected a 10% increase and a 20% increase, 10% increase in salaries and a 20% increase in operations. Now, does that mean salary increases of that? Obviously not. It means, do they need more bodies because they're having to transport more, or the facility is larger? So I don't know. So, I just kind of wanted to throw some, some thoughts in there, because we don't know. We don't know what those future costs will be. But we know that they will probably increase. Hopefully, operations related to repairs and maintenance will be substantially less with a new facility. But utilities will probably be more, because of the size of the facility. But it'll be more efficient. So so there's a whole lot of factors in there that's hard to say. Yes, that 10% is a good number. That 20% is a good number. But I wanted to put that in there so so you all could see how those numbers would increase and still basically be covered by by our forecasted revenues. And then the other part of that, like we were talking before, is as we get down here at the bottom, here is the Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Corrections Facility debt payments. So as you can see, again, those, if you look back at that other spreadsheet related to the wind turbines and the debt and the MERS, these three numbers are the principal and interest payments off of that other spreadsheet. So those have been factored into, this spreadsheet also, to hopefully encompass, all the expenditures that we can see, we can see going forward into these forecasted years. So again, that's a whole lot of information, a whole, very large, spreadsheet, and again, remember the caveat down here at the bottom, related to, past performance potentially is not indicative of future results. It's very fluid, it's adaptable. As we know, new developments, like Commissioner Marino said, and we actually did factor in, I think there's can't even recall one of the areas where we have a budgeted change to some salaries with some settlements of something, and we factor that into the spreadsheet. So I mean, those kind of things to forecast, we can factor those kind of things in, because no matter how hard we work at this, I can guarantee you it's not perfect, and it's not 100% accurate, but it is based on very accurate data points that we have today. So I feel, like I said, real comfortable that it's as accurate information as that we can provide today. So I don't know if there's any other questions related to this, or
Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Krinovic? Commissioner Jolzinski.
I don't have any questions. After getting up on the rail on this so many times, I do want to thank you. It's a very well thought out tool, and I do appreciate it, and it's answered a lot of my questions. And I would hope that this as a tool could be supplied along with the next year's, along with the next year's budget. So whatever changes might come about, we can recalculate and have that with our firm budget, just to continue to have this good picture year after year after year. I appreciate all the effort you went into it, put into this tool. Thank you, Steve.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Steve, I want to say too that this helps me tremendously with just knowing past, present, and it's, as a new commissioner, it's so hard to come up to speed sometimes and what everybody's doing, and this is just excellent as far as forecasting. And there's some ideas I've got rolling in my head as far as sinking funds and as the whole project gets going. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other commissioners? All right, I'd just like to compliment all the staff that was involved in this. This is, I don't know if the public can see this, I'm gonna hold this up, but this is the booklet that we all got described to us, and it's like they said, this is a moving target, this is a work in progress, and this is a good guideline. Kind of sets some of the plans and together. If you put all these spreadsheets out on top of each other, it all kind of meshes in. Again, we're going to ask some policies through finance. I know I certainly have some questions in regards to percentages that we carried over, especially 67% of our expenditures are salary and benefits. I have some questions going forward with this, but I'm not going to bring them up because of the time frame right now. But certainly some questions I'll have going forward with this. But again, I think it does meet some of our concerns with how we're going to fund and pay for and going forward with our jail project. And how we're going to tie everything in, as Commissioner Moreno also said, with the COVID-19 funding that we're going to possibly be receiving, and that should be a positive, not a negative, going forward. And that's going to be, I guess, a good problem to. I wouldn't say a problem. That's going to be a good situation to have on board. So, again, just. Going forward, like I said, thank you very much for your time and effort putting this in. All to everyone involved, thank you very much. Okay, you know what? Going forward, next up, appointments to boards and commissions. Commissioner Hope, you want to read that one real quick for me? And you are muted. Oh, I think you still.
Jim, if he.
Yeah, Tobin, you're muted.
Sorry.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, let's try this again. It says, consider appointing one member to the Community Mental Health in Central Michigan Board for a 3-year term ending March 31st, 2024, or until a successor is appointed. And the applicant is Karen Scanlon. Karen has been on this board since 2008. Prior to that, she was on the Midland Gladwin CMH board starting in 1996. She's very knowledgeable, very engaged. She's involved with the Summit Clubhouse. She also is on the Mid-State Health Network Board of Directors. So I can't imagine the CMHCM board without Karen Scanlon. So I'm really glad that she reapplied for that position.
Any other commissioners have any comments on Karen Scanlon? Okay, seeing none, that will move forward to this evening. Next up, committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First up, consider accepting and placing on file the March 4th, 2021 routine personnel items as presented. And we have several stepping and one resignation. And that's it. Any questions on that? Hearing and seeing none, then that item will move forward to tonight's agenda.
The next item is consider ratifying and placing on file the February 26, 2021 invoice list in the amount of $242,268.63. The March 5th, 2021 invoice list in the amount of $1,958,677.74. And the adjustment list dated March 11th, 2021. Went through a review of these on committee. The first list is the February 26th list. Again, these are very customary, well known to the board. We have a couple of payments to Michigan Municipal Risk Management for our liability insurance and also retention fund. We have our regular payment, January payment for financial services of $15,864. We have a payment of $14,510.06 to the DSS Corporation. It's the annual maintenance for recording software in our server for the central dispatch in 911. We have 4 payments to attorneys making payment for February public defender appointments. And we have Just Fab Graphics of LLC, $5,000 for wrap and graphics for emergency response vehicle. I'd like to see that vehicle when it's all done. That's got to be outstanding. Any questions about that particular list? All right, moving on then to the March 5th invoice list. We have our bi-weekly payment to HATS, which is animal control contract of just under $6,000. We have a Verizon Wireless of $70,651.80 for monthly charges. We have JP Morgan Chase Bank, $66,588 monthly credit card charges through administration. We have a Reamer Plumbing and Heating, $15,448.90 to replace the boiler for the jail. I did ask committee if we can get a rebate on that when we open up the new jail or resell it. I didn't get a affirmative answer. State of Michigan, $66,568.79 for the February Circuit Court transmittals. We have a couple of charges, payments to WellPath LLC for medical services at the Sheriff's Department. Looks like we have 5th current tax distribution from the Treasurer's Office to intermediate school districts or community colleges serving our county. We have another one to the state of Michigan for $29,028.54 for the February district probate court transmittals to the from the trial court. And finally, we have Wolverine Human Services of $8,983.24 for February private agency services for youth supplied by the courts. And I got to turn my school clock off here. No, I guess I can if I can keep talking. Sorry. Anyhow, those are the big invoices. Are some smaller ones, which I did go through the list and didn't see anything of concern. Any questions on either the March 5th or the February 26th? The adjustment list, I got to pull it up on my smartphone because for some reason I never make the copies of it. The adjustment list for the February 26th invoice list, we have Gordon Food, which is very familiar. We're discounts for early payment by the Sheriff's Department. DTE, we had a payment added to avoid a late fee by Buildings and Grounds. There's 3 of them in the city of Mount Pleasant. They're all minor adjustments. Again, payments to avoid late fees. We have Weiss Township. We have an invoice for $78,032.79. It's added invoice for the tax settlement. In fact, there's one to Weiss Township, one to Nottawa Township, and one to Denver Township for tax settlements payable from the Treasury Department. I'm not sure exactly what those tax settlements involve, but I'm sure the Treasurer Steve Pickens could do that. I didn't ask.
It's probably paying the delinquent taxes. I'm assuming that's because then the next one that's got quite a bit added too. So I'm assuming that's probably paying off the delinquent taxes. Margaret, does that sound right to you? You're on
You're
mute.
muted, Margaret.
You're muted.
Pardon me. I'm not certain. I could ask Mr. Pickens.
Okay. Well, then moving on to the March 5th adjustment list. Again, we have Gordon Foods for receiving discounts from the bill for early payment of purchases. Priscilla White, looks like a small change due to mileage error in mileage calculation. And then we have another one to the city of Mount Pleasant, adjustment to avoid, decrease due to entry error on the city of Mount Pleasant water payment. And then again, we have quite a few, again, from the treasurer for tax settlement. And I guess we'll find out later exactly what those are for. Questions on the adjustment list? All right, then we'll move this forward. Do we need a motion on this?
No, no motions.
To tonight's meeting then.
Okay. Item number 3, consider approving the Motorola Communication System and Services Agreement between Isabella County and Motorola Solutions Incorporated for the installation of a 5-console position MCC 7500E dispatch solution in the amount of $934,650 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Central Dispatch was impacted by a lightning strike back in September. It affected multiple areas and numerous pieces of equipment. The county submitted a claim to MMRMA for repair and or replacement of damaged equipment. The total estimate for damages came out to $972,000. Harold Stegman of Procom Incorporated was very helpful in getting that claim together for us and that equipment through that whole process. MMRMA agreed to pay the claim and will be making a 25% down payment on the equipment. And then Motorola requires a communication systems and services agreement. This agreement's been reviewed by our legal counsel, and this is the end result. The cost of $934,650 includes a MyDeal discount of $157,968 covered by MMRMA. The county will be bound to maintaining, licensing, and servicing the equipment through its lifespan Harold Mr. Stegman told us it'll take 3 or 4 months to complete the work and get the new equipment in there. So, any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing and seeing none, then that item will move forward to tonight's agenda.
Next item, consider approving the addendum to the agreement between Isabella County and MGT of American Consulting LLC for the preparation of the county's fiscal year 2020 cost allocation plan in the amount of $12,000 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Before I do this, I want to make one more comment. Margaret made clear to us at the committee meeting on the previous item, usually you have a deductible, but apparently we're not going to have to pay the deductible, which would be considerable with normal insurance. So that was just another sweet benefit from, from the lightning strike. I guess we can have a benefit. But on the cost allocation plan, we're looking at $12,000 a year, and the amendments look like pertaining to the first one is amendment to extend consulting services agreement between the county and MGT for the fiscal year 2020. And also the next one, amendment to extend consulting services agreement between the county and MGT for the 2 years 2020 plan and the 2021 plan. And the final is consulting services agreement between Isabella County and MGT, consulting dated June 16, 2020. Margaret, you can probably make better heads on this than I am.
Yes, yes, sir. I'm happy to do that. If you refer to the agenda motion, we're actually just asking to have the second year approved at this point. We've gone through the first year. We were very satisfied with the services, but rather than doing the next 2 years all at one time, we'd prefer to do the second year and make sure the relationship goes as well, and they don't, assign someone different to us that doesn't work so well or whatever. So we'd like to just approve the 1 year extension at this point.
Any questions? Then we'll move this forward to tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
And item number 5 then is consider approving the updated Isabella County Financial Management Policy number 411. Management policy to take effect immediately upon adoption. And what this does is I think all the departments had a sign out form, but this kind of standardizes the form so that they're all using the same form. Is that correct, Margaret?
It standardizes that everyone is using the same form. I think there were a couple of departments here or there who maybe weren't always having somebody sign them out, but this policy changes it, structures it a little differently, and gives them the form to use. So it's just a good update to the policy.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, hearing and seeing nothing, that item will move forward to tonight's agenda. And Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next up, Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first item is consider approving the Isabella County Prosecuting Attorney's Office purchase of prosecutor by Carpel software in the amount of $103,850. And the 100-foot view of this is that the prosecuting attorney's office has been working with some very old software that's not allowing them to work efficiently from home in this time. And this will bring them up to a modern software that they can retrieve documents from anywhere and also tie them into the sheriff's office as well. And official Barbary is here.
Prosecutor Barber, you want to go ahead?
Sure, I missed that last part. I was sounded like you cut out a little bit there, Steve.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sweeney, I apologize. So Commissioner Sweeney has kind of indicated at least the catalyst for this was obviously the pandemic, but I will admit we are researching this software prior to the pandemic. to allow individuals to be able to work from home. One of the things that our office does handle is the on-call duty on the weekends. And we were trying to look at potential options. At the time, we had prosecutors that were working for our office that lived 45 minutes to an hour away. So we were trying to figure out if there was a way to allow them to work from home on the weekends rather than have them report into the office physically or have to come into the office at 2 a.m. to complete a search warrant. Those types of things. That's what started this. That, and there are some deficiencies in the software that we currently use in general. The software that we're currently operating, it's called Adult Case Tracking as well as Juvenile Case Tracking, short for ACT and JCT. And those integrate with our filer program that other county offices are using right now as well. That's our digital file retention software. Rather than keep physical paper files, we do back up everything digitally right now. This software, what we're looking to switch to, would integrate or essentially replace both softwares. We currently pay a fee to the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan to utilize and maintain the ACT database and to utilize the ACT and JCT software. We also pay an annual fee to Filer, Cherryland, I should say, to maintain their Filer software and licensing for our office. This would essentially subsume both fees on an ongoing basis. So those would no longer be necessary to maintain. We'd probably have 1 year where we'd want to keep an overlap to be able to access those files in need. But for the most part, this would be shifting that ongoing concern and ongoing cost basis to the new software. It's also, I think, valuable to note that these softwares, it's not something that would be unique to our county. Our neighboring county to the north, Clare County, already made this transition. They got in line quite a bit before us, and they switched over back in November of last year. We've heard good things out of Clare. They seem to really enjoy the software. They've given us kind of a playbook on some things that were challenging in the transition, things to look at, but all in all, they've indicated it's been a very positive transition. They did not have online record keeping like we do already with digital file keeping. So their transition actually cost less, but it was probably a little bit more cumbersome in the sense that they went from paper to digital. And obviously they had to scan in a lot of data and things of that nature. But looking at this from our perspective, this is really, and I guess I should also add, I do sit on the Tech Services Committee for the state, for the Prosecuting Attorneys Association. We've been looking at upgrading ACT since about 2012. And the start of that was to try to get some programmers together and switch to a cloud-based software. It's now 2021. And frankly, we have not made enough improvement at least from my perspective, to think that it's anywhere in the near future that we're going to be making that switch. In the last 3 years, I keep hearing how we're going to be making the switch to the program is called Next Gen. And we're just not there as a state. I don't know how long it'll be before we're there. And we're now at the point where we are considering doing privatized bids, requests for proposals through companies like Carpel to actually potentially take the entire state to this software. That's how slow the process has been at the state level. So with that in mind and knowing where we're at on switching softwares from ACT to Next Gen, that's what caused us to look for other alternatives. And this software, yes, it does allow us to work remotely, but it is a lot more than that. It really allows streamlined integration between law enforcement and our office. Prior to the pandemic, all of the police reports in our office were hand delivered, and this would allow them to be able to be uploaded digitally and have automated input or automated data input from those files, meaning rather than have an individual have to sit there and input all the data that comes into our office, it would automatically generate and pre-populate into our office. So the files are input on one end and then streamlined on the other end in our office. In addition to that, as our staff report indicates, this would also allow us the opportunity to do things such as digital discovery, allow us to better serve the victims of crimes by giving them an opportunity to see where cases are at, get updates on court dates, have instant contact with text messaging and things of that nature. It just allows a lot better communication and workflow between law enforcement agencies, our office, the courts, and the victims of crimes. Another automation would exist between the court system and our office. Right now, if we get a notice on a file that a new court date is occurring, what actually happens is we'll get a physical paper notice. It comes into our office. It's generated by somebody in the courthouse. Then it comes to our office. That information is then put into ACT, and that's where it sits. It doesn't populate into anybody's calendar. The attorneys have no idea until we print out a docket of where these cases are going. Certainly, we keep track of important dates on marquee cases, but not every case is put on our calendar from that point. And what this software would allow us to do is, as soon as the court puts that information into their system, it would then populate into our system, and we'd have seamless integration with Outlook. Attorneys would be able to access their calendar on their mobile phones, things of that nature that we don't have right now. I was kind of startled, to be honest with you, when I got here to learn that there's no email integration with attorney cell phones. There's no calendar integration with cell phones. So really the only way we have any idea of what's going on in our office is if you're physically present in front of your machine, or creating redundant calendaring and things of that nature. In addition to that, this does allow us to deliver discovery electronically, both to receive electronic discovery from law enforcement agencies, but also to deliver that discovery electronically to defense attorneys and or their clients. And why I think that's hugely important, certainly in today's age, or I should say certainly currently with the pandemic, we don't want to have additional foot traffic in our building if not necessary. And more importantly, it really allows us to have a data trail so that we know what was given to who, when it was opened, those types of things. Recently, I had an incident where a defense attorney claimed that they did not receive a piece of discovery. And it was troubling because there really wasn't a way for us to track that. We had notes, we said, well, the email was sent to you on date X, but we had no way to verify that it was opened or received. We do have read receipts, but in that particular instance, it wasn't utilized. And so we had no way to verify whether they'd actually received that information. This software has built-in fail-safes to protect against that, so that if somebody were to download it, not only will we be able to show when the item was sent to them, but when it was accessed and downloaded by that defense attorney. And in today's age, that's very important. I mean, we're in a digital world, and the inability to deliver discovery digitally can be cumbersome. I've got a case right now with 5 co-defendants on a homicide case. The discovery certainly is vast. I mean, we're talking 600-700 pages of items, DVDs, et cetera. And defense attorneys in that case are all over the state. So without a way to deliver that information efficiently, we've struggled on that case, and it has been kind of difficult. Additionally, the software it is cloud-based, which is kind of the way the world is moving, meaning that you don't have to be sitting in front of your computer to access the files. We do have remote desktop, but it doesn't work very well with this particular software because it is so dated. ACT has been something that our office has utilized, I want to say, since the 90s, and the program itself hasn't really received a lot of updates since then. This software would be able to be utilized across platforms and be accessible both whether you were on a Macintosh, whether you're on a PC, or on an iPad, which is, in today's era, it's very nice because it allows an individual to use their personal computer to access the information without any concern about data breach or any encryption issues on that end. So it maintains that confidentiality because it is cloud-based, And it doesn't require each individual machine to have their own encryption levels like we do in our office right now. Also, it allows really real seamless data tracking, so we can identify what cases have been sitting, how long cases have been processing, and an easy way to show who's got which cases assigned to them right now. We can see today, we've got an easy way to track total cases in our office, as well as who has what cases pending, but there's no easy way to show who has what cases that are actually open. So it's challenging to see, between the 6 attorneys, whose workload is lighter than others, et cetera. And this would allow us to know instantly what types of cases, what proportion of cases are assigned to each attorney, what number of domestic violence cases we're taking each year, what number of methamphetamine cases we're taking each year, and be able to keep good statistics on that information. So frankly, so I can report it back to you guys, as well as to law enforcement and other community agencies, such as our drug court programs and things of that nature, to try to identify areas that our community needs to work on and try to improve on as far as law enforcement efforts and community efforts to either reduce recidivism and drug users or domestic violence and child abuse type situations. It also allows us a lean audit trail. I don't know that that's of major importance to the board, but it does allow us to, it is CJIS compliant, so we would be able to receive lean information that way. Where currently we are not. We're actually, I've never understood this mentality, but it's actually safer to send the lean to a fax machine than it is through email. So that's typically how we receive lean right now, is through a fax machine. And so not many of my younger prosecutors own a fax machine. Frankly, I don't know if anyone owns a fax machine in our office, so it makes it challenging for weekend warrant duty. And I should note that it also, it does allow us to connect, assuming that this is the way the rest of the state, and I don't want to say that is the way the rest of the state's going, but so far, Kent County, Clare County, Roscommon, Saginaw, and Crawford, I believe, have come on board with this same software. We have done due diligence. We are aware of this software, and this developer does contract with some states to maintain the entire state's district attorney software. So it's not a fly-by-night company. We have done quite a bit of due diligence on them. We've reached out to different counties that are utilizing their software and learned some of the pros and cons. I was particularly interested in those that are using ACT right now. Not all counties utilize ACT, but most of them have said that the data has been seamless to transfer between them. But there are certain things that they pointed out that we want to make sure that we're addressing if we were to go this way. The other thing that I want to bring up is the potential funding sources for this. And one of the major catalysts for bringing this to the board now is the fact that there is some money available. We do have a grant that we've already actually been awarded that I think we would be able to redirect funds from. We've got about $30,000 surplus in an unused grant right now that was given to us or awarded to us through the CARES Act and part of the pandemic relief that I think we could redirect to this program. We obviously we are in line or later in tonight's agenda, we are looking at requesting some 2% funds to be utilized as well. We're in the process right now of writing a federal grant that's due next month that we think may help supplement this project as well. And we have about $14,000 in our budget from forfeiture funds that I believe would be also eligible to be directed towards this project as well. It's the pandemic related funds that I see as being something that we need to try to utilize while they're available this year. And that's a big part of the reason why we're trying to do this now, as opposed to wait until next year's budget cycle. I think I've kind of laid out all of the major issues. But I guess the main thing is it really, from my perspective, it's long overdue. I think that, you know, we've certainly used what we've had for a long time, and it's a decent program as far as getting done what we need to do. But being that, you know, I hate to sound like this, but coming into the office, there were certainly things that I noticed that probably needed to be updated from a technological standpoint. We're working on doing some of that this year with IT, most notably the issues with our email and the lack of access to that and our personal phones and things of that nature. But I think this is one step that will really change how our office handles things and improve our inner office as well as outer office efficiencies between law enforcement and victims.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for Isabel County Prosecutor? Commissioner Moreno?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. It's nice to hear that this is a direction we're going. Ever since I've been on this board, I've emphasized these kind of things, and there is an inertia towards that had been going on. I think this will be a really good investment. I think it's great the way you're coming up with some funding solutions, and I think it will make your staff's jobs easier and more justice served. And I hope this spreads to a lot of other areas in the county that we could definitely use stepping into the 21st century with.
Commissioner Jalazinski?
I know we're looking at the next COVID funding level, which according to records, an estimated amount is just under 14 million might come towards the county's way. Now, Margaret kind of alluded to that in the committee. We don't have those instructions yet, or what can or cannot be funded. But this seems like something could be perhaps funded in total out of the monies that would be coming from that source. The only other thing I was thinking is the discussion went on. I know that various departments have very specific software needs. Prosecuting attorney's office needs certain things. I know we just did a jail management program for the sheriff's department some time ago. I think it's within the last year. And I know the discussion when that software came before us was that it was going to automatically upload to the prosecuting attorney's office, to public defender's office, certain aspects of that information that would be useful for those other departments. And I'm just hoping that these software packages can communicate with each other to bring added value to the individual department softwares.
Can I respond to that?
Please.
Thank you, Commissioner Jalazinski. Actually, you bring up a great point, and I wanted to be clear on that. Before we reached out, or before I brought this to the board, that was certainly one of the things that we looked into. I know the sheriff did make a request, and it was granted last year for some software updates as far as their reporting software. And certainly that was something we wanted to make sure is that our software integrated with them. Obviously, we don't want to spend all the money on the software they purchased and then buy this and not have them communicate. So it was something that we addressed with the Carpel Development Company, and they indicated that they've used the Talon software before that the Sheriff's Department has moved towards, and that it would integrate with their software seamlessly.
Thank you.
The only other additional comment I wanted to make, I certainly don't want to make a request like this and put any duress on the board to approve the spending. But one of the issues that I have is we have reserved a spot in October of this year to come on, and basically what it would be is our go live date or the onboarding period of transitioning from our old software to this software. And they've held a spot there for us with the understanding, obviously, that we're hoping to be able to do that. In the event that we were not to get the clearance, not necessarily at today's meeting, but soon, then we would probably lose our spot in line. And the next spot is already looking out to March of 2022. Wow. Again, they have, obviously, a software company like this, they run into the same problems, or I shouldn't say they run into this. They've come into a boon. the fact of the matter is the pandemic has caused a lot of people that had paper offices that where everybody had to be in the office to do these things. This has been a great catalyst for them as a software company because everybody's trying to transition into a remote office and things of that nature. So they've certainly seen an influx in their demand for their product. And that's kind of why Clare County got ahead of everything. They were looking at November and they'd already had that date before the pandemic hit. And so when I made the request, the earliest we could get was October. Again, I don't say that to create any unnecessary duress on the board. I certainly wouldn't want to make a request of this magnitude and put any pressure on you guys to make a decision like that. But that is one of the realities that I face.
Mr. Chair?
One real quick question or comment. It is 6:24, so I'm not going to go long-winded here. I noticed it's a one-time cost of $87,000, so it looks like an annual cost of around $13,000. Is that in par with what you're normally paying now for your system that you use now, or how does that break down? Real quickly, because
sure, it's a little bit more. Currently, right now, we're paying roughly $10,000 and change. So it's about $3,000 more than we're currently paying for our other two softwares.
But again, like you had mentioned, it doesn't account for all the time and all the effort having used an antiquated system. I know I saw you put a 2% grant in. I know a lot of times the tribe, when they do that, they like to fund one-time expenses. So hopefully, at least if they do fund any of it, hopefully they can at least get the one-time $87,000. And congrats to, as we've seen later on, if we get to it, how, trying to get grants, utilizing just instead of one set fund, going to different types of systems, way to fund this. So nice job on that, prosecutor. And again, that's all I have. And just to remind the commissioners, it's 6:25, not to rush anything, but
Get nervous.
That's all I have.
All right. If there are no further questions, we'll move this on to the regular session tonight. And thank you, Prosecutor David Barberry. All right. Number 2 on our agenda, consider approving the fraud alert protection price quote provided by GovOS, a co-file company, and the Register of Deeds automation budget adjustment in the amount of $5,400 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. So Isabella County Register of Deeds, Karen Jackson, here to describe this new software that's offered by co-file.
Yes, this is a new product that co-file is offering for its Vanguard customers. Isabella County has historically had some type of property fraud protection for a lot of years. Our old company, which started out as ACS and transformed into Avenue, charged at the end, it was $1,500, but all it did was send someone an email. Then the person who received the email would contact us. We would have to try to figure out which of the names that their fraud protection that they had received the alert for. We would go through the records. We would look for all these names, try to find the document. This is something that is new. It has a link. It allows the person to click on the link and they instantly know what document sent that alert. So there's no questions. Right now, our staff is really struggling with, we have tons and tons of questions every day. A lot of them have absolutely nothing to do with the office, but it's our constituents that are, a lot of them are under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, because we're a friendly office. We're not a court office, so they don't have any fear of us. So they call and they ask. The other day, somebody wanted me to, their question was how to move their clock ahead in their vehicle because we're on daylight savings time. It's like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what type of car, it's like, you might want to check your manual. But it's constantly things like that. And it's with the staffing issues that we've had, we just do not have the staff to try to look all of these documents up for these individuals This would be a great use of the tech fund. The tech fund can only be used for certain things, and this is something that is a complete legitimate use for that tech fund. I think it would be a great asset to the Isabella County. It allows us to put something forward, a friendly face forward, that we are trying to protect our constituents, and that's what we want to do. We want to protect them. We also, since I went to committee last week, my office has had 2 calls about this. I guess Clare County just installed a new system, and so they have a property fraud protection. And so we've had people call because there are quite a few of our taxpayers are also property owners in Clare County. And so they have called and they're looking for something. At this point in time, we don't have anything in place. The Vanguard system or the co-file does have another property fraud protection, but that's the old style. We really need to move forward and go with something a little more technology advanced to help our constituents.
All right, thank you, Register of Deeds. Are there any questions for Register of Deeds, commissioners? All right, seeing none, we'll move this forward to the regular session tonight.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have one item left. Consider approving the 2021 State Survey and Remonumentation Grant Report in the amount of $42,053 and authorize the Isabella County Register of Deeds, Karen Jackson, to sign the agreement electronically. This is an agreement we've been due annually. There's no cost to the county. It's been, I don't know what the years we've started on it, but for the chairman here, Commissioner Hutchison, it puts up the GPS and the monuments for all the counties. So it's been going on for quite a few years, ever since I've been on here. Like I said, it's an important program, and we'll probably be doing it for quite a few years after this, as long as the money is available. So try to make it quick. I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Karen. We're all familiar with it. Commissioner Hutchison might not be, but very worthwhile program.
A
Set
very
the markers.
worthwhile program. It helps our GIS to be more accurate. It keeps the cost of surveys down for Isabella County. We have a lot less boundary disputes because of this remonumentation. It also helps create secure land records for future generations, and it encourages economic development. We use the funds very wisely. They allow us to do center of sections now, so we have moved to some center of sections. Mr. Rudell is very good at taking the state's money. So I think we will probably be utilizing as much of the state's money as we can for as long as we can. Once you have reached all of the sections or all of the corners that you had in your original plan, then you go on something called maintenance, which means you get less of the state's money. So we are now moving towards some of those center of sections so that we don't go into maintenance, so we can continue to reap the money from the state.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Seeing none, we'll move that forward to tonight's business session. And Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next up, Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first item is consider adopting Isabella County Board of Commissioners Resolution number 21-03-01, authorizing the submittal of Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund acquisition grant application to support the Meridian Park acquisition project, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We talked about this several meetings, and I'll hand this over to Sue Ann Kaufmeyer, the Director of Parks and Recs.
Negotiated, this is for 100 and, or the grant would fund 80,000 and then we would match it 30,000. But there's a lot of other things that will go on before it's approved or after it's approved. And again, then I'll be back. And that's not until the end of the year. So with that, that's why I'm here.
Any questions or comments?
I just have a real quick question.
Go ahead,
Sue Ann,
Mr.
any issues at the public hearing? Anybody have any
Oh,
questions?
I'm sorry, none, no.
Okay.
I know Commissioners Engler and Hutchison were at the exciting Zoom meeting that we had that was a little entertaining, but no, very positive. We had 2-3 letters of support as well. So thank you for asking that question. It went really well.
Thank you.
And Sue Ann, that's 11 acres?
Plus or minus. It will depend on what the final number will be when we do the survey, if we get the project, and then.
Yep.
the
Okay.
appraisal. Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
If there's no more questions or comments, Commissioner Hutchinson, could you take the next item, please?
Yep. Number 2, consider approving the Michigan Medicare Medicaid Assistance Program, MMAP, memorandum and understanding between Region 7 Area Agency on Aging and Isabel County Commission on Aging, effective April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2025, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We were presented with Jennifer gave us a great presentation on this. We want to.
Sure. So we have had this MOU with Region 7 Area Agency on Aging for quite some time now. And what this does is it provides education and resources for our MAP counselors, which are the Michigan Medicare Medicaid Assistance Program. So right now we have 4 trained MAP counselors, and with this MOU, they can continue to get, if we hire somebody new, we can get them trained to become a MAP counselor, and then our existing counselors can continue in education for all the changes that come about with Medicare and Medicaid, so they can assist the older adults in our community with those applications and any forms that they have to complete.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, Mr. Hutchinson. Jennifer, I know this is a growing area as our society ages. It is amazing. Several personal instances with my mother and also with my in-laws, just how important a system like this can be. Getting counseling on Medicare, Medicaid, things like that, and elder law, financial planning, that type of thing. These are not a problem that's going to go away. It's just going to get, and I'm glad that the county can help do things like this. So.
Yeah, it's a great resource, and it is well used as well. So we're excited to be able to offer that.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll move this forward to tonight.
Okay, our next item is consider approving Region 7 Area Agency on purchase of service provider agreement, addendum K, COVID-19 premium pay for in-home providers, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We've been doing this before. Jennifer Crawford, could you talk us through this, please?
Absolutely. So not too long ago, I brought addendum I to you. And so now we have addendum K, which is extending the premium pay, the $2 per hour premium pay for direct care workers. And this is for our purchase of service or our waiver agreement that we have in place with Region 7 Area and Agency. Our existing agreement is in effect till September 30th of next year, 2022. And as of right now, we still are serving, we have 1 waiver client that we serve. So we have 1 staff who is eligible for the premium pay under this addendum. So that equated to $28 for January and February, which is what this covers.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this? We have had this before, and this is a continuation, like Jennifer said, at this time. If no one has any questions, this will be on the agenda really soon tonight. Okay.
Number 4.
Mr. Hudson.
Number 4, consider approving the $2 per hour temporary premium pay for the Commission on Aging, direct care workers, and authorize the board chair to sign direct care worker page through documentation forms for the month of January and February 2021. Jennifer?
Now they extended this premium pay for 2 months at this time, January, February. So this would be for all the other servants or clients that we serve with area agency funding. So with this, we would have 8 employees that would be eligible for the $2 an hour premium pay. It is just our direct care staff, the homemaking aides, personal care respite care aides. And so this is the total amount that we could provide them would be $1,622.83.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, that concludes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have nothing under intergovernmental affairs. We have nothing under administrative controller. We have nothing under unfinished business. Next up, new business. Commissioner Jelazinski, would you tackle this, please?
Consider the following Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan Spring 2021 semi-annual 2% requests reviewed and assessed by the Board of Commissioners Standing Committee. The first one is Commission on Aging requesting $514,348 for programs and services. Do you want to comment on that one? Oh, go ahead, Margaret.
Margaret, you gotta take it. You're muted, Margaret. Still muted. Okay.
I was just going to make a quick suggestion. So aging request is the standard request that they made in the fall. So they make the same requests in the fall and spring. That's what the tribe has asked to have happen. The humane animal treatment is for a spay and neuter program, which the Board of Commissioners has seen before. The prosecuting attorney just made a presentation regarding his software. That really leaves the material recovery facility in the sheriff's office, perhaps one that you would like to have more in-depth information on. I'm just thinking for the chance of the meeting being so long, maybe we want to just move this to the evening meeting because most of this you've already heard, at least in committees. And then the sheriff is going to be at our evening meeting tonight anyways, because the closed session, it has something to do with his operation. So he could present his request, which is something unique that he has asked for. I don't know if the board's interested in that, but I think that could be a reasonable thing that could happen if you're so interested. And if not, that's fine too. Just a suggestion.
I think it's a very good suggestion to do that. And I do have a question though. I know I was looking at my emails, late ones, and I see we have the score sheet there. I don't know how I'm going to have the time to fill it out and fax it, or not fax it, but get it back to you. I don't have a fax machine either. But
you don't need to. You could fill it out in email. You could just send me an email tomorrow even. I don't need it, Commissioner. It's okay. You could send me an email just with your ratings. You don't have to fax that back. Whatever works for everybody. We're flexible. Whatever's the best thing.
Thank you. Any questions for Margaret? We'll move this then to our tonight's meeting.
Okay. Next up, general public comments. Nicole, do we have anybody out there?
There are lots of people out there, but there is no one for general public comment at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Next up, announcements. Commissioners, any announcements?
I have one, but I'll save it for tonight's meeting.
Any other commissioners? All right, hearing none, I'll call the adjournment, 6:43. We'll see each other in about 17 minutes, give or take. Not too much to take. Thank you.
Thanks.